It's officially handcuff season. I love it. I love it. We're out here. We're picking up more players, getting ready for the fantasy playoffs. Dave, I want to jump into our waiver wire draft for this week, but before we do that, I want to let everyone know, go and check your waivers right now because there's a couple players that are available on waivers in roughly half of leagues that really still present a lot of value. One of them, Dave, being Antonio Gibson, available in 56% of leagues. And I before the show, you were telling me that you might look at Antonio Gibson, but you're still a little worried about Chris Rodriguez, the other running back there in Washington.
And that's it. Yeah, I was talking about maybe having like Antonio Gibson as a number one waiver wire pickup, but one, he's rostered in too many leagues to qualify for that title, and two, I think they like Chris Rodriguez. I mean, I don't think this is a team that is going to just start pounding Antonio Gibson between the tackles. I think they like the role that they have for him, where he can catch passes, where he gets out in space, and they use him on some creative jet sweeps and things like that. But really, I think Chris Rodriguez is a guy worth picking up. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if they just take kind of 80% of the workload that they were giving to Brian Robinson, give that to Chris Rodriguez. I think Antonio Gibson will see an uptick in work, but I think this is going to be much more of a split going forward if Brian Robinson has to miss any time than Antonio Gibson in this coveted workhorse role.
Well, we do see the Commanders have a bye week this upcoming week, and
But they're
uh,
saying a
it,
multi-week absence potentially for Brian Robinson, so
that's the
that's worrisome.
thing. Yeah, if it's a hamstring injury, these things do tend to linger, and we'll probably talk about some more hamstring injuries later. We need more of these NFL players doing yoga and maybe some ballet, like your 85 Bears. The
Yeah.
other guy that's on here that is still available in just too many leagues and showing his value this weekend, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, available in 45% of leagues. Dave, he led the Seahawks in targets this past week, and he's showing that he is incredibly valuable. And he's not one of these guys that needs to see an injury happen in front of him for him to actually produce.
Yeah, I mean, he's already producing with a healthy DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, but the contingent upside if one of these guys goes down is astronomical. If he can become a top two guy here, I don't want to say that he's taking over Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is still plenty involved. I mean, 8 targets to Lockett, 8 targets to Metcalf, but Jaxon Smith-Njigba still pulled 11 targets with both of them healthy. He's looked fantastic for the last 2 weeks now, kind of making these eye popping catches, doing the things that we saw him do in college. And this is something I've said a lot throughout the season. We talk about how rookies take some time to warm up and you need to exercise patience with these rookie wide receivers. Well, we're talking about a rookie wide receiver who was the unanimous wide receiver one in this class, but talk about time warming up. He missed all of the preseason. He missed most of training camp with a wrist injury. Like his first taste of NFL action was when the regular season started. So this is a guy we need to exercise even more patience for, but he is better than Quentin Johnson, better than Zay Flowers. He is the premier prospect of this class. So he could really come on strong down the stretch, even like you said, without an injury to either of the receivers ahead of him.
So those are the two guys that are still available in roughly half of leagues. And if they are on your waiver wire for any reason, just go out and check. I know that everyone always says no one's available in my league. I'm in a 19 team for some reason, odd numbers and 45 roster spots. No one's available. Just go and check. Just go and check. Now for this week, we are bringing back the waiver wire draft here for the week 14 waiver wire ads that you need to make. Dave, we're going to split this up. Two teams, Team Dave, Team Alfredo. We are going to make these selections in a sort of a snake order here, okay? Prioritizing the players that we want to get the most off of the waiver wire. Dave, I'm going to let you take the first pick on this one. Who is your first pick for the week 14 waiver wire?
This is the really obvious one. You should have picked him up weeks ago. I hate to take an I told you so moment here, but Alfredo and I have been telling you, we've been telling you to pick this guy up since week one. Tyjae Spears, Tennessee Titans running back. Obviously, if you watched the game yesterday, it was really weird to see Derrick Henry take a lick like that. You normally don't see Derrick Henry get hit like that, but he left his feet and just got drilled into the turf, head off the ground, and is in concussion protocol. Now, if there is any silver lining for people who are rostering Derrick Henry, it's that the Tennessee Titans do play on Monday, so he does have an extra day to clear concussion protocol here. But what we saw yesterday, I mean, Tyjae Spears was the only other active running back, so he got 100% of the snaps, 100% of the touches after Derrick Henry went down, and they used him the same way they used Derrick Henry. I mean, in the fourth quarter and overtime, he had 16 13 touches. That is just unbelievable that he had that many. 16 of his, or I'm sorry, 16 carries in the fourth quarter and overtime after Derrick Henry was injured. So right now, the other two running backs on the team, Hassan Haskins and Julius Chestnut, they're both injured as well. So if Henry has to miss this next game, which is a tough matchup against the Dolphins, don't get me wrong, but it could be one of those game scripts that works in Tyjae Spears' favor, where he is catching a lot of check down work, great pass catcher as well. He could be a bell cow in this offense. So Dolphins up next week, which, like I said, could be a good game script for him. Texans the following week, another potentially good game script. And then the Seahawks, who haven't been too great against the run. So no idea how much time Derrick Henry is going to miss. But if Henry's not playing, we're looking at Tyjae Spears as a top 15 running back.
And Dave, you mentioned that Derrick Henry is in the concussion protocol. Talking with Dr. Chow yesterday on our week 13 injury recap, only 22% of players that sustain or go into the concussion protocol actually come out and get ready
Mhm.
to play in the following week. Now, you mentioned obviously there's that little extra day there, right? They play on Monday instead, so that might change things. But I'll say this: outside of Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears, no other running back on the Tennessee Titans has touched the football this season. So
Yep.
expect a big role for Tyjae Spears if Derrick Henry can't go. For my pick here, it's weird. Like, there's just these running backs that people are not picking up despite the performances. And I'm just going to grab Keaton Mitchell. The Ravens were on a bye last week, and not enough people picked him up because I know, I get it. Like, you want to be winning week after week, and you don't want to have any empty roster spots on your bench there with a guy who's on a bye week. But Keaton Mitchell's still available in 69% of ESPN leagues, and I just don't understand it. This is a player that we've seen has been the best running back for the Baltimore Ravens for a good running team. He's averaging over 9 yards per carry on the season, and his role just continues to grow. This is absolutely insane. He was near a 50% snap rate last week. And we know, Dave, seeing this year after year after year, after the bye week, teams tend to deploy their rookies in a different manner. These young guys, where they get an
Mhm.
extra week to really get the game plan and get themselves ingrained into what they're doing. And a team like the Ravens, who is they're basically set for the NFL playoffs. They're looking for new wrinkles they can add to this offense. And coming up, the Ravens have the Rams and Jaguars, not two juggernaut defenses that are going to stop the run, but they're not cakewalks either. These are actually just some pretty good matchups for Keaton Mitchell, where we're going to see he's been getting involved in the passing game. He's been one of the steadiest contributors in the running attack. Dave, I don't understand why Keaton Mitchell is still available on the waiver wire.
Because not enough people watch our show. Anybody who's been
That's
watching our show would have picked Keaton Mitchell back up in week 8 and had him stashed. I mean, yeah, it's crazy that he's still available in any leagues at all. This is a guy who has league winning upside, like the hands down best, most explosive playmaking running back on a very good offense. Seeing his role grow, yeah, pick up Keaton Mitchell. What are you guys doing? All right, I'll
all right,
take
Dave.
another guy here, and I
Yep.
I can't believe I'm talking about this guy. This is a guy that I faded, not aggressively in the offseason, but I thought people were a little over their skis with Elijah Moore. But the time has come. I mean, it is impossible to ignore what we're seeing here. Elijah Moore has typically, historically, like over his career, he's in year 3 of his career now, and he's played a decent amount of games with Joe Flacco. His yards per route run in the games that he plays with Joe Flacco over 5 times higher than it is with any other quarterback. I don't know why. Can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but Joe Flacco is enamored with Elijah Moore. And we saw it in Joe Flacco's first start of the year at 38 years old, first game with the Cleveland Browns. He threw the ball to Elijah Moore 12 times. And in this game, Amari Cooper exited with a head injury. So we're looking at, if he has to miss any time, again, we talk about concussion protocol, guys not being able to come back the next week. That would open up even more of an opportunity here for Elijah Moore. Looking at his schedule, got the Jaguars coming up, got the Texans in a couple of weeks. So got 2 matchups here that could potentially be shootouts. The Browns, crazy as it sounds, with Joe Flacco, are still 7-5. They're gunning for a playoff spot. As long as Joe Flacco is the quarterback, which he should be for the near future, Elijah Moore is going to be a target dependent guy who is going to see a lot of looks. Like, again, this is one of those things that I can't really explain why. Joe Flacco just loves Elijah Moore. And if Joe Flacco's a quarterback, you got to start Elijah Moore.
Oh, I mean, we see this all the time, whether it's a backup quarterback, a new quarterback, a savvy veteran that gets signed off a practice squad. They find the guys that they're comfortable with. And we've seen that even over in New York with the Jets.
Yep.
Elijah Moore and Joe Flacco, they had that relationship. And it's interesting. You talk about the splits with and without Joe Flacco. Elijah Moore is averaging 13 PPR fantasy points per game with Joe Flacco in
I
his
know.
career. It's just, he's had multiple games here with double digit targets. Whether these are high quality targets or not is a different story. But I mean,
But we
it's
saw
kind
it
of
in his
hard to
rookie
ignore.
year. Yeah,
Yeah.
Elijah Moore's rookie year, we saw that stretch over like a 6-game period before he got injured where he looked like a wide receiver one and he was putting up wide receiver one production and then couldn't really figure it out last year. I don't know if he was in the doghouse with Salah or what it was. Traded him away for pennies on the dollar. Deshaun Watson didn't really look his way all that much, but we know Elijah Moore's got talent. We saw it in a very small sample his rookie season. So, talented guy with a quarterback who loves him. Yeah, I mean, like, not only is he a guy that you're picking up, but if you're hurting a wide receiver, you can plug Elijah Moore in as a potential flex option next week. I'm sure we're going to talk about him later in the week on our starts and sit show.
Ooh, I really love the enunciation there. You know what? He was my sleeper. He was my wide receiver
Yeah.
sleeper this week because I saw this whole relationship with Joe Flacco. It worked out pretty nice. I'm gonna go here with my next pick and Ezekiel Elliott, running back for the Patriots. And it hurt me to say it just because I mean it's Zeke and it's the Patriots, and it's just like it's one bad thing that compounds on top of another bad thing. But I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because, like we always say with running backs, volume kind of trumps everything. And that's really what you need here with Ezekiel Elliott. He's available in 66% of leagues, and it's looking like a high ankle sprain. And talking to Dr. Chow last night on the injury recap episode of the show, it looks like Ramondre Stevenson could miss 3 to 4 weeks. The Patriots are looking at potentially putting him on IR. And even if we're talking just 3 weeks, that's essentially the rest of your fantasy season here. So Ezekiel Elliott becomes an absolute must add for fantasy managers off the waiver wire. Running backs are a rare commodity in fantasy football, especially a running back that can give you the volume that Zeke can. And he took all but 3 snaps once Ramondre Stevenson went out of the game early. And we actually saw Ramondre was getting the touches early. He had 9 carries in the first quarter. The
Mhm.
Patriots can't really do anything else on offense except try to run the ball. And that's what I think we're going to see with Ezekiel Elliott going forward. He had 22 opportunities in this last game. And next up, they've got some pretty decent opponents here going up against the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills, who have both been susceptible to some decent running backs.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, even if he misses 3 to 4 weeks, which I guess at this point in the season, if a guy's missing 3 to 4 weeks, that's
He's
pretty
done.
much the fantasy season. Yeah. But even if he does come back for week 17, what we've seen with a lot of these guys who come back from high ankle sprains, it takes them weeks to get that injury behind them. So even if Ramondre Stevenson does come back for week 16, week 17, something like that, expect Ezekiel Elliott to be much more involved than he was earlier in the season. So Zeke might be the priority guy to add if you're hurting at running back. Like if you've got running backs and you could stash somebody, yeah, Keaton Mitchell's the guy. But like if you need a running back now that you need to put in your lineup, I think Zeke might be the priority addition this week.
Dave, if we get word that Ramondre Stevenson does have a high ankle sprain and that the Patriots are potentially looking at a 2 to 3 week absence, let's bring that down.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with cutting Ramondre Stevenson from your team? Because, like you said, even if he's active, you don't know. This is like in one of those dire situations where you need to add players and you know you're not going to have, there's no IR spot. You know you're not going to have Ramondre for 2 to 3 weeks. And even if he does come back, you don't know that you're actually going to start him. So is this one of those where in certain situations you might be comfortable cutting Ramondre Stevenson because of this injury?
That's a tough question to ask, but yeah, it could be one of those sabotage drops. The grenade that you drop to the waiver wire where somebody else is going to pick him up. He's going to take up a valuable bench spot for them for the next couple of weeks, and then, like we said, most likely come back and not be completely effective. But I think the one thing with Ramondre Stevenson is even if he is injured and not playing at full strength, he's still in PPR leagues is going to have value just grabbing check down work and racking up points that way, even if he doesn't have the big plays or touchdowns or a heavy workload on the ground. So I don't know if I'd completely be comfortable dropping him, but if you're in a league that only has 5 or 6 bench spots, then I think you do it. But it all depends on league size. If you can afford to stash him, do so. But I think 5 or 6 bench spots is about where I'd be comfortable dropping him.
All right, let's take a look at your next pick here. Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, available in 91% of leagues.
Yeah, it brings me absolutely no pleasure to talk about Jonathan Mingo as a guy to pick up. First of all, we were hoping Adam Thielen, his early season production is starting to look more and more like a mirage. The last 2 weeks have just been absolutely brutal. And Bryce Young, man, he just there's a lot of career left for Bryce Young, hopefully, and hopefully he can get it together at some point. But right now, he does not look like he has got it. Jonathan Mingo, he's starting to look like the wide receiver one here, though. And, the wide receiver one on any team is going to be somewhat valuable. He's had 6+ targets in 4 straight games, including a team high 10 targets last week. So that's good to see. And Jonathan Mingo, another guy, a rookie who, talk about exercising patience with Jaxon Smith-Njigba because of his injury. Jonathan Mingo is another guy you should have exercised some patience with. He wasn't a guy who was coming in as this polished, pro-ready wide receiver. They drafted him because he's big and he's fast and he's athletic and he's got yard after the catch ability and things like that. And it seems like now he's starting to figure it out a little bit. I mean, everybody's going to see that play from 2 weeks ago where he like actively tried to get out of bounds rather than keeping his feet in bounds. And he's still, a very raw player. I know you hate that word, Alfredo, but he's got a lot of polishing up to do. That being said, he's seeing targets right now. He's got big play upside. So if you're hurting right now at wide receiver, if you want somebody that you can stash for maybe some late season boom games, I think Jonathan Mingo has that in his range of outcomes.
Jonathan
Really
Mingo is a
sold that
guy.
one good, right? Yeah, kind of.
It's I mean, you had everything going for you until the landing at the end. I give you an
I mean, I
8.7
can't
German
sit here
judge.
and like confidently say like you need to get Jonathan Mingo. Jonathan Mingo is a league winner. Like I'm not going to say that, but
Right.
he's a good athlete. He's slowly starting to ramp up. He's seeing his usage increase. He's worth a stash in deeper leagues, is what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, and that's what I'm gonna 100% agree with you there. It's tough because it's not just asking if Jonathan Mingo can be good, it's asking, can Bryce Young be a good quarterback? Can this Panthers offense ever be in scoring position? Can they sustain drives? What can they do going forward? I will say this, one of the signs of encouragement here, Dave, and why I think he's worth a stash, and I agree with you, is he had 39% of the target share this past game and 32% of the air yard share. So this is a guy that I think we're kind of seeing a changing of the guard here. We're early in the
Mhm.
season, like you said, it was Bryce Young looking for Adam Thielen. Now all of a sudden he's really looking for Jonathan Mingo, and we'll take that for what it is. It's maybe he's a upside wide receiver 3 in certain weeks.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you my next pick here, and it's a wide receiver who, man, he's about to see his value skyrocket, and it's weird to see that he is still available in 72% of leagues. Romeo Doubs for the Green Bay Packers. And I know that Jaden Reed has been the guy that we've been talking about, but Jaden Reed is now rostered in too many leagues. And Christian Watson it sucks, man, because he was just coming alive. He was coming alive. He got himself his 2 touchdowns last night, and we were starting to see that was 4 touchdowns in 3 games for Christian Watson. Dave, is there a guy in the NFL that needs to do yoga more than Christian Watson right now? I I'm beside myself that this guy's always getting injured. He's always
Yeah.
hurting his hamstring.
And that's what I was going to say. It's always the hamstrings. And, we've seen this with some other like really talented wide receivers where hamstring injuries just plague them. I mean, we talked about it in the offseason with Darren Waller. Like you and I both really like Darren Waller. And we said, well, yeah, sure, he's hit his hamstrings for the last few years here, but maybe this year will be different. And where is he right now, Alfredo? He's sitting on IR with a hamstring injury. And we saw this with Miles Austin, a really talented player who was a lot of fun and just constantly tweaking his hamstring. And I don't want to say that this is going to be, the story for Christian Watson for the rest of his career, but 3 hamstring injuries in 1 year. He injured these hamstrings last year. He injured the hamstrings in college. It's worrisome. Yeah, do some
Yeah.
yoga, Christian Watson.
Do some yoga. There's all kinds of fun yoga. I really want to do
Go
the
sit in a
pu-
steam room, a sauna, whatever you got to do to loosen those tight hamstrings up.
Hey man, doing some hot yoga changed my
Mhm.
life. Oh
Yeah.
my, my hips open up. I don't need that oil can anymore.
Right now,
But
I know you
okay.
can put your legs behind your head. Are you willing to do it on camera, Alfredo?
No,
I'm
no, no, no,
totally
no. I don't get paid nearly enough to do that. No. No. Go there. You know what? Nope. I
I
was gonna make
totally
a
threw you
joke.
off your game
I was
there.
gonna
We can
no.
keep going.
I was gonna make a joke, and I'm not trying to get in trouble today.
Sorry, Joe.
So let's actually just talk about the waiver wire ad that we were talking about here, which is Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. So we talked about it. Christian Watson out with the hamstring injury. It did not look good. Romeo Doubs, though, in his 6 games without Christian Watson, averaged 4 receptions, 37 yards, 7 targets in those games. He had 3 touchdowns over the first 3 games without Christian Watson. And this is a Green Bay Packers team that Jordan Love really looks like he's hitting his stride at the right time here towards the end of the year. Dave, I'm sorry for you as a Bears fan. Looks like the Packers have themselves a
They did
quarterback.
it again.
Yeah, he's earning himself some money, man, as the season goes on here. It's been a roller coaster. But over the next few games, they've got the New York Giants, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers, and Minnesota Vikings. And I know that we wanted to kind of like hold back a little bit when it came to Jonathan Mingo, but with the way that Jordan Love is playing and with the likely, I don't know, let's call it maybe end of season injury for Christian Watson here, depending on how bad the hamstring injury is, Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed sound like guys that could actually be league winning type players at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, completely agree. Romeo Doubs looked like the wide receiver one early in the season. Like he was garnering a ton of targets, and then Christian Watson came back. We saw it start to dissipate a little bit, but yeah, now with no Christian Watson for the foreseeable future, yeah, I got to look at Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs all over again as a wide receiver 2 option here. Now, I could have gone a lot of different ways for the last guy we were talking about, and there's a lot of stashes that I really like, running back stashes. And we'll talk about some of those guys in just a little bit, but I'm going to talk about Kenneth Gainwell again, the guy that we've talked about a lot this offseason, a lot this preseason, and a lot throughout this season, saying to pick him up. I really don't know what else to say that we haven't already said. We've been talking about him for the last few weeks, talked about him on our playoff stash show, talked about him on last week's waiver wire show. This is just kind of like a big picture type thing. You want to draft these backup running backs and hold on to these backup running backs, especially in the playoffs when injuries happen. If Swift has to miss any time, we're looking at Gainwell as a potential RB1. And Swift, I don't know. We haven't gotten any word on the injury, but you watched that game yesterday. He got lit up in the final minutes. Now, I don't know if that's going to be an injury or if that's just going to be an ice bath and he'll be feeling a little bit better afterwards. But Kenneth Gainwell, absolutely worth a stash at this point. He also saw 6 targets yesterday, so that indicates that they're potentially warming him up a little bit. Just kind of a weird game for Swift in general. He only saw 4 touches in the first half of the game. Again, I'm not sitting here saying that like Gainwell is a guy that you have to pick up and plug into your lineup, but he's a stash on a good offense that has really high contingent upside if Swift has to miss any time.
I mean, it's handcuff season. It's handcuff season. Like that's where we're at. We talked about these type of players last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I'm getting my weeks crossed up here, but in our mustache episode, mustache. Sorry for those of you that are listening who just thought that was weird. I put my finger up underneath my nose, made a little finger mustache. Just thought you guys should, appreciate that. All the more reason for you to head on over to YouTube and check us out, youtube.com/football guys. But yeah, Kenneth Gainwell, it's just goes back to the simple policy of we want good players on good teams, especially at the running back position. This is where you need to have those handcuffs, have those stashes. And it doesn't even have to be your handcuff player. It can be the running back of a guy you don't have, because that just continues to add more value to your team.
Right. And we could have done this entire show. I think we tried to do some kind of outside of the box thinking with, Elijah Moore and Jonathan Mingo and Romeo Doubs and other guys. But like really this entire show could have just been handcuffs. We could be telling you to pick up Deonta Foreman and pick up Miles Sanders or Chuba Hubbard and pick up Latavius Murray and pick up, Dearness Johnson and every single backup, because that's what you really should be doing at this point in the season is just having a bench stocked with these high upside running backs who you can hopefully plug in or hopefully have for insurance if your running back ends up missing.
Now, a guy that I had considered to be a wide receiver handcuff here when we did that mustache episode, Noah Brown, available in 66% of leagues. And this was probably one of the most heartbreaking. I mean, not that all injuries aren't heartbreaking to see, but this injury was really heartbreaking to see. Tank Dell, who gets a broken fibula, I believe it was, and his season is done. And this wasn't even on a play where he was actively doing anything. The play was over, and he has a lineman roll up behind him underneath his leg, cut him out from under, and he gets carted off. And it absolutely stinks to see that. And while we didn't see Noah Brown become this guy that went and got a bunch of receptions after Tank Dell went out, Noah Brown did lead the Texans in snaps and routes run in this game, despite the huge blow up from Nico Collins. And we already have kind of seen a little bit of a sample here with Noah Brown, where in weeks 9 and 10, 13 receptions in those 2 games, 325 yards, and just a touchdown there. But I mean, I'm not expecting him to go out there and continue to give you 150 plus yard games every single time. But the way CJ Stroud is playing, this is unprecedented, Dave. This is a guy that we are
Mhm.
looking at who is being considered to be an MVP candidate right now, who has the Houston Texans playing like a team that has a shot to win their division, has a shot to make the playoffs. There's a lot going on here. I know Tank Dell really hurts that, but if Noah Brown can step into a similar role for Tank Dell, and he's got that versatility to line up outside, inside, wherever, and we really haven't seen anyone else in this Texans offense step up. They don't seem to trust John Mechie enough. Robert Woods really isn't the playmaker that he used to be earlier on in his career. I think we could actually see Noah Brown play a vital role here for the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Brown all throughout preseason was the wide receiver 2 in camp. Tank Dell was just kind of those, being so great that they couldn't ignore what he was doing. But
Right.
the plans this offseason were to have Nico Collins as the wide receiver 1 and Noah Brown as the wide receiver 2. They paid him pretty handsomely in the offseason. They had really high expectations for him, and then he picked up a few injuries. But now the opportunity is going to be there for Noah Brown, and he's not a bad football player. With Tank Dell out, first of all, why was Tank Dell in blocking? Like, why was he on the scrum? A 165-pound wide receiver was in the scrum at the goal line. Again, not trying to get off on too much of a tangent here, but like that bothered me to see. Like, that is not what you should be using Tank Dell for. That rolling around with
It's
350
always
pound
easy for
bodies
us.
in
It's always
hindsight.
easy for us to
Yeah.
give that hindsight and be like, well, why was this guy out there? And then, like, out of the other side of our mouth, we're like, dang it, I needed that guy to get one more catch and I would have won my matchup. Like, why'd you take him out early? There's just those little things. But yeah,
I
it's just
know. Just
either way, it sucks to
Yeah,
see.
it sucks. Yeah. And yeah, Noah Brown, I think he's a guy that, hopefully we can just plug him in as a potential high floor, high ceiling type of wide receiver 3 here down the stretch. Nico Collins has been great. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's stepped up. He's looked fantastic. He looks like a legitimate wide receiver 1, but somebody else is going to need to step up. I think without Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz is probably the biggest winner. Like, if you've got Dalton Schultz on your team, looking at him as kind of a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season potentially. But Noah Brown is going to see some opportunities too.
So I'm intrigued by that. That kind of leads us into our remaining players that we have here. You mentioned Dalton Schultz. Um, One of the guys who stepped up this past week was Brevin Jordan at the tight end spot for the Texans, and it's interesting because he complements
Such a
Dalton
good
Schultz
athlete.
so
Oh,
well. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is
I
that
had
he's just a
such high
phenomenal
hopes for him
athlete.
coming out of Miami. Yeah.
He every time that he caught a pass, like when you kind of get used to seeing these tight ends. They catch it and they're kind of bum, 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 8 yards. Like that's it. He was catching the ball and he looked like he was shot out of a cannon every single time. It kept surprising me. That doesn't happen often where I'm watching football and I get surprised by how good a player looks, especially when he's not a supreme talent. But Brevin Jordan looked very good for the Texans. I think he might have carved a role out for himself as well. Dave, he's available in 99% of leagues. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities opening up for this Texans offense.
Yeah, and I mean, we have seen CJ Stroud. Like, this is the guy who's plugged into an offense with playmakers and is just kind of a product of it. Like, I'm not trying to discredit Brock Purdy, but like Brock Purdy's job, throwing the ball to George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, is a lot easier than CJ Stroud's job of having to throw to the pass catchers that he has. But CJ Stroud is playing just as well as Brock Purdy, and he has elevated all of the talent around him. So Brevin Jordan is a guy who we had high hopes for coming into the league. Didn't really do too much for his first 2 years with Davis Mills, but we've seen CJ Stroud breathe life into Nico Collins. We've seen him turn Tank Dell into a wide receiver 1. We've seen him support Dalton Schultz. We've seen the boom games from Noah Brown. So no reason to think that Brevin Jordan can't be the next beneficiary of CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud's playing out of his mind. He's playing
Yeah.
absolutely out of his mind. It's someone asked me this morning that if you were starting a team right now, who are the quarterbacks that you would want to build around? It's
Mahomes,
hard. It's hard to not have him in the top
and
5 or 4. It's
Mahomes,
Mahomes,
Burrow, and then probably
Burrow,
Stroud.
maybe Allen and Stroud somewhere in there. Like he's got probably in that top 5. You can make arguments for a lot of these guys, Lamar, Hurts, et cetera. But
I mean,
CJ
Stroud is
Stroud,
already kind of doing everything Josh Allen is without the interceptions. He doesn't have the rushing upside, but if that's what I have to choose, like they're very similar passers with how they can push the ball downfield and make those big throws. And
yeah.
if I'm kind of getting one that has rushing upside and throws a lot of interceptions. I'd probably take the guy that doesn't have quite as much rushing upside, but doesn't throw the interceptions. I don't think you'd have to twist my arm to say that you'd rather build a team around CJ Stroud than Josh Allen right now.
The Texans just look really good. When I was watching that game yesterday, I was just like, the defense is good, the offense is good. They still can't run the ball very well, but to
Damian
see,
Pierce had a couple nice runs yesterday. I was
yeah, it was
surprised.
fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was just solid, solid. I would just love to see the Texans win that division for the sheer chaos. It would just be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
D'Amico Ryans, by the way, needs to be in the talks
Coach of the
for
year.
Coach of the Year. Like
Hands down.
him, Dan Campbell. I mean, there's a few guys in that talk there, but wow. Wow, the Texans. All right. Let's take a look at some of these remaining players. So, in some of your more shallow leagues that you might see out there in the waiver wire, Curtis Samuel available in 65% of leagues, Joshua Palmer available in 78% of leagues. And I had drafted him last week as one of my earlier guys to have. And this week I left him off. There's talk that
Absolutely. He's a priority guy to pick up.
well, so I was going to say this is talent wise, yes, opportunity, yes. There's reports, at least from Brandon Staley, saying that they're going to probably take it slow with him because they're not sure that he's going to be ready to go when he comes off
Ooh,
IR. And that really sucks. So that's one of those
yeah.
things like we're going to have to follow that really closely because you're right, David. 100%. He's a priority guy. I'd probably would have made him like a top 2 or 3 guy
If we
in
knew
the
he was
waiver
coming
wire
back.
list. Yeah, if we knew that he was coming back healthy, ready to go, nobody in that Chargers offense has really taken over that wide receiver 2 role. Joshua Palmer could have jumped back into that. So
And the weird
that's going
thing,
to be one of those
if I
things.
recall, Joshua Palmer got injured. It looked really serious. He came back in and finished the game and then went on IR after, which was really weird to see.
Yeah, listen, I don't know. I don't know. That's gonna be one of those where we're going to have to pay attention to the reports
Mhm.
and kind of, look at the coach speak here. What is Brandon Staley really saying? And just follow along with those guys. If you have an IR spot that you can pick him up and stash him onto right now, I would go ahead and do that. Some of the other guys that are last guy that's available in, or excuse me, we've got about 3 more guys that are available in shallow leagues, which would be Elijah Mitchell, handcuffed to Christian McCaffrey, who
Mhm.
we have not seen Christian McCaffrey get injured, but it's anything is a possibility. I don't want to put that out into the ether. Roshan Johnson, we saw his role expand a little bit. Dave, you still have some trepidation there, despite the great performance that we saw, or at least the great usage that we saw. But that's probably going to be a 3-man committee still. And then last but not least, Jameson Williams scores another
Ooh.
touchdown, but and that play was incredible. The play
Yeah.
was incredible. Jameson Williams is probably in that list of like top 5, top 3 fastest guys in the league right now. We just still haven't quite seen the usage. And hearing Dan Campbell talk about him after the game, it still feels very much like he is in the training wheels protocol here for the Lions.
Yeah, but when he gets the ball in his hand, he's electric. I mean, he's fun. That was an awesome play. I mean, that was one where I was kind of in the middle of making a plate. We were eating some meats and cheeses yesterday, and I was off to the side of the room making myself a plate, and I just caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I said, "What was that?" And I had to rewind it. I mean, talk about looking like he was shot out of a cannon. Jameson Williams has some wheels.
Yeah, man. James, what meats and cheeses, by the way? I gotta know.
I just eat them. My wife is the one that goes out and buys them.
Wait
We
a
still have
second.
family in town from the
You are
wedding.
consuming things and you don't know what you're eating, David?
Salamis, pepperonis, prosciuttos, I don't even know. I just,
Okay.
I
Okay.
take the thinly sliced meat and I wrap it up in a cheese and I eat it. That's it. So, we still have a lot of family in town from the wedding, so we were hosting yesterday, and, my kinda rule is I'll host on a Sunday, but you guys are all going to be in the basement watching football with me, and everyone obliged.
I just love that as adults, we've normalized just eating Lunchables in a fancier way, where we're
Don't even
just like meats and cheeses for
Listen,
everyone.
listen, I do this to make my wife happy. I think spending the amount of money we spend on fancy meats and cheeses is very, very silly. Give me a granola bar and I'll be fine. I'm very easy to please.
Dave, I hate that. I hate that so much. That's easily your worst take I've ever heard on this show.
We've had the charcuterie discussion before. It is, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the charcuterie boards, but if it's there, I'll eat it. Either way, Jameson Williams looked great as I was munching on my charcuterie board yesterday.
At Dave Kluge on Twitter. Tell him charcuterie boards are awesome. Send pictures of your charcuterie board to Dave Kluge.
Please don't.
let's let's take a look at some other guys that are going to be available in deeper leagues. These are players that are available in roughly 97 to 99% of leagues. They should be everywhere. So I don't want to hear the messages in the comments that nobody's available in this video. Like, come on, these guys should be available.
I
Trey
mean, if you're in a
Sermon,
league where Brevin Jordan is already rostered, what are you doing watching this show? I mean,
yeah, good on you. Like, just I don't know. I don't know anymore. But Trey Sermon, available in 97% of leagues. He's the backup running back behind Zach Moss for the Colts. And like we've been saying, it's handcuff season. There was a brief moment there where Zach Moss was hurt and he was coming out, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get Trey Sermon seasoned. Like, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. You just cue up the Obi-Wan Kenobi gif, but gif or GIF? What team are you on, Dave?
Jiff.
GIF. Okay, cool. I'll just go
I
that
don't
way.
think it's a
GIF.
question. The creator of it said it's Jiff. Like if
Did he type it out or did he say it?
no, he said like they asked him. The creator of it said that it is pronounced Jiff. So I don't think there's any debate here. Like if the guy who
That's
created
weird
it
though, because isn't
said,
it graphics? Like that's what the G stands for.
yeah, but I don't know. Maybe he likes peanut butter.
This show has gotten so stupid towards the end. Okay, other
Week
running backs.
14, week 13,
Yep.
week
Yep.
14, ladies and gentlemen.
Peanut
Almost
butter
there.
butts. We're having a great show. The other running backs and players to consider here in these deeper leagues: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, available in 97% of leagues. That Patrick Mahomes led offense, just they get in near the goal line. We're seeing the kind of success that Isaiah Pacheco has. Dave, this was a name that you brought up, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel good about it, but McKinnon hasn't played the last couple of weeks, and
Yep.
there's some contingent upside here. He looked okay.
There's the analysis. Put it on a graphic, football guys. Dash
Clyde
Clyde
Edwards is
Edwards-Helaire.
there.
He looked okay.
He looked okay.
This show's going just awful at this point. Jalen Hyatt, we talked about him last week. There's already news that Tyrod Taylor could be coming back here pretty soon. I don't even know that he gets the starting job back though. Tommy DeVito, man. Listen, we talked about this with oh my gosh, with Keaton Mitchell and other rookies coming out of the bye weeks, teams want to use these guys a bit more. And Jalen Hyatt could be a player that we see start to get a bit more of usage. He led the team last week, or excuse me, the previous week before last, in receiving and in targets. So we could see that open up a bit. And
Jalen Hyatt's one of those
another,
guys, if he was on a good offense with a good quarterback, we would be enamored with Jalen Hyatt. Like what he can do, his ability to get deep and behind defenses is great. The issue is right now we don't know who the quarterback is going to be, and the Giants kind of stink. But like, imagine taking Jalen Hyatt and plugging him into the Chargers or plugging him into the Bills or one of these sorts of teams. The talent is there. It's the situation right now that's kind of holding him back. But we'll see who the quarterback is next week, and maybe we'll like Jalen Hyatt.
Now, we mentioned earlier Romeo Doubs and the Packers and how things change because of the Christian Watson injury. Dontavian Wicks becomes a guy that you kind of can't really ignore here. He's available in 99% of leagues, and he's been one of those guys that's just kind of consistently always getting 3, 4, 5 catches. He remains involved, and I think he's more talented than a lot of people might have thought, and he has you used the phrase earlier, he's too good to ignore, and so they have to get him on the field, and he's just been one of those guys. He just continues to make plays, and now with Christian Watson being out, we could see a role get expanded for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they showed the graphic on screen yesterday, but like the average age on this Packers team is under 26 years old. Every single receiver in Green Bay is either a first or second year player. They don't have a single veteran there. So right now, we like Christian Watson and we like Romeo Doubs and we like Jaden Reed, but this is still very much so anybody can step up in this pass catching room. And Dontavian Wicks, he's kind of showed his chops for the last few weeks now.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be we talk about both these Texans and Packers offenses with good quarterback play and with availability and targets. We're going to start to see some guys step up that maybe we're not used to talking about. We already talked about Brevin Jordan being the tight end that could, start to steal, not maybe steal snaps away from Dalton Schultz, but be a guy that's out there with him. We don't know how this Texans team is going to adjust. Could they go into more 3 wide receiver sets, 2 tight end sets? We don't know. But last guy that I do want to talk about here, Chris Rodriguez Jr., available in 99% of leagues. And Dave, you mentioned him earlier when talking about Antonio Gibson, that you don't think that Chris Rodriguez just goes away, This is a guy I really liked out of Kentucky.
Yeah.
He's one of those bangers in between the tackles. He does a lot of the same things that Brian Robinson does, and I think he was a little bit underrated going through this draft process.
Yeah, completely agree. He's worth a pickup just to see how the usage is. I don't think that you're either of us are going to be like banging the table to plug Chris Rodriguez in your week 14 lineup. But if Brian Robinson has to miss a few weeks and we see Chris Rodriguez in that Brian Robinson role, then all of a sudden we're looking at Chris Rodriguez as a potential play for week 15. So we're doing a waiver wires. Are we not going to talk about Mitch Trubisky? Potential
No,
starter.
we are not.
All
No,
right,
we are
all right.
not.
I'd at least throw it out there. But if you are to
What's the opposite of would? Like, people like would, like that, won't, like
will
that's
not.
me.
No, yeah, wouldn't. I
Would not,
think
wouldn't,
wouldn't.
would not.
But hey, if you're in your two quarterback super flex leagues, any quarterback with a pulse will do. And looks like we might get a start out of Mitch Trubisky with some decent play calling and some good weapons in Pittsburgh. So we'll wrap up on
Okay.
that note, right?
Okay. Good depressing note to finish up on. Well, there you have it. That's our week 14 waiver wire ads. We're going to be back again. Dave, we're almost to the fantasy playoffs, man. Almost here. We got to keep powering through. And those of you getting ready for the fantasy playoffs, make sure you're stashing all these players. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Adios.